As a racist officer patrols the park, he spots Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson sitting on a bench and demands that he leaves, claiming he doesn't belong. When The Rock refuses, the officer swings his baton, striking him on the back. Little does he know that he's messed with the wrong person, and now he's about to learn a hard lesson. Subscribe and like this video to see how the story unfolds. The park was alive with the sounds of a sunny afternoon, birds chirping, children laughing, joggers moving along the paths. Among the crowd sat Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on a bench, enjoying the rare peace of anonymity. Dressed in a hoodie and sunglasses, he blended in with the regular parkgoers. He wasn't there to draw attention, just to relax after a grueling schedule. Officer Kane cut an imposing figure as he sauntered through the park, his gait exuding a sense of overconfidence that bordered on arrogance. His reputation for profiling anyone who didn't fit his preconceived notion of who belonged where was notorious, and it was clear that he relished the power his badge afforded him. As he made his rounds, his piercing gaze happened to land on The Rock, sitting solitary on the bench, minding his own business. Instantly, Kane's prejudice flared to life, his assumptions fueling a dangerous conviction. The insidious workings of Officer Kane's mind were palpable as he tightened his grip on his baton, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Under his breath, he muttered to himself in a low, snarling tone, "What's a guy like him doing here dressed like that?" The implication was clear. The Rock, with his hooded sweatshirt and sunglasses, didn't fit Kane's narrow-minded vision of someone who belonged in the park on such a beautiful day. To Kane, anyone who wasn't actively engaging in some activity or other was immediately suspect. As Officer Kane advanced towards The Rock, his heavy boots grinding against the gravel with each determined step, his air of authority thickened with every inch closer he drew. With zero preamble or even a polite greeting, Kane's barked demand pierced the air. "Hey you! What are you doing here? You can't just loiter around." The Rock, caught off guard by this sudden intrusion into his peaceful reverie, gazed up at Kane with surprise and a hint of annoyance, his cool facade momentarily slipping. The Rock's sunglasses, acting as a shield against the glares and stares of those around him, gradually descended from his face. The slow, deliberate movement of his hand revealed eyes that were sharp and piercing, reflecting a deep well of knowledge and confidence. As he met Kane's accusatory gaze, The Rock's voice remained even and composed, the timbre of his response imbued with an undercurrent of authority that demanded respect. "I'm just enjoying the park," he said, his words landing like a pebble in a calm pond, rippling through the tension-filled silence that had descended upon the park bench. The Officer Kane's sneer twisted his features into a grotesque mask of derision, his lip curling in an arrogant display of contempt. The contemptible words, "people like you," lingered in the air, the implications stinging The Rock like a slap to the face. "Yeah, well, this isn't a place for people like you to hang out all day. Move along," Kane commanded, his voice laced with a dismissive tone that seemed designed to belittle and insult. The veins on his neck throbbed with indignation as he glared down at The Rock, the tension between the two men palpable and rapidly escalating. The Rock's expression shifted, a single eyebrow arched in a quizzical arch of curiosity, his eyes fixing onto Officer Kane with a piercing gaze. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, a subtle yet noticeable flicker of irritation flickering across his face as he asked, "People like me? What's that supposed to mean?" His words were measured, each syllable clipped with an undercurrent of annoyance and defiance, making it clear that he was not one to be trifled with or dismissed. Officer Kane's patience was wearing thin, his grip on the baton tightening to a white-knuckled grasp. The air surrounding him crackled with a sense of impending violence, his body coiled like a spring ready to explode. "Don't play smart with me," he snarled, his voice resonating with a venomous edge that indicated he was rapidly reaching his breaking point. "I'm giving you a direct order. Get up and leave," he barked, his command punctuated by a vicious flick of the baton, a deliberate attempt to intimidate and coerce The Rock into compliance. The Rock's resolve was unyielding, his steely gaze and unwavering posture a testament to his unshakable composure. His voice remained even and composed. as if the situation were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Officer, I'm not breaking any laws. I have every right to sit here," he declared, his words spoken with a hint of authority that left no room for doubt. The defiance in his words was palpable, a stubborn refusal to bow to Kane's demands that only served to further enrage the increasingly unhinged officer. Kane's face contorted with rage, his features flushing crimson as his temper reached its boiling point. The veins in his neck pulsed with fury, his grip on the baton morphing into a weaponized extension of his volatile emotions. His words, a primal growl that echoed through the park, demanded a response. "Are you resisting me?" The challenge in his tone was unmistakable, his desire to exert authority and dominate the rock, overpowering his sense of reason. With the precision of a predator striking its prey, Officer Kane swung his baton with unbridled force, the powerful blow reverberating through the air with a sickening thud as it connected with the rock's back. The brutality of the attack was unfathomable, its viciousness amplified by the suddenness of the strike. The sound of the impact was deafening, jolting nearby onlookers out of their afternoon reverie. Shock and disbelief painted their faces as they hurriedly whipped out their phones, frantic fingers scrambling to document the horror unfolding before them. Emerging from his seated position, the rock's form unfurled with a languid, deliberate grace that belied the simmering fury within. His stature was commanding, the breadth of his shoulders and his imposing height suddenly apparent to all. The transformation was both subtle and profound, the change in his expression marked by a measured shift from his previous serene composure to a controlled fury. His dark gaze, now tinged with steely resolve, fixed upon Officer Kane with an intensity that radiated danger, the coiled energy in his body a testament to his legendary physical prowess. The rock's words were spoken with deliberate intent, each syllable dripping with menace. His voice, a low growl simmering with restrained power, carried an unmistakable message. Big mistake. The quiet fury in his tone was chilling, his composure transforming into a cold, calculating focus. His hands clenched into fists, veins bulging as his muscles tensed in preparation for what was to come. Officer Kane, once the aggressor, now found himself face to face with an adversary whose formidable size and lethal skills could spell his ruin. Kane's arrogance was palpable, his smirk a twisted caricature of contempt as he underestimated the danger he now faced. Unaware of the volatile power coiled within the rock, he scoffed dismissively, his words laced with mocking disdain. "Oh yeah? What are you going to do about it, tough guy?" Kane jeered, his tone condescending and derisive. His ignorance was staggering, as if he believed that his badge and baton could shield him from the consequences of his actions. The rock's silence in the face of Kane's provocation was pregnant with anticipation, the air crackling with a sense of imminent retribution. Taking a deliberate step forward, his movement exuding a regal bearing, the rock encroached on Kane's personal space, his presence now a physical embodiment of the looming threat he posed. "You think that badge gives you the right to hurt people for no reason?" The rock spoke, his voice a powerful resonance that carried a palpable weight of indignation and fury. The words were a condemnation of Kane's actions, a scathing indictment of his abuse of power. As Kane once again unleashed his baton in a wild swing, his rage-fueled movements sloppy and untrained, the rock's skills as a wrestler sprang into action with lethal efficiency. With one lightning-fast motion, he snatched the baton from the air, his hand moving with supernatural quickness to intercept the attack. The crowd's collective gasp of astonishment was drowned out by the clatter of the baton as it was swiftly tossed aside, the rock's deft maneuver showcasing a level of skill that defied belief. Towering over Kane, the gulf in their abilities now starkly evident, the rock's voice boomed with a chilling authority. "I'm giving you a warning," he growled, the gravity of his words carrying the weight of an ultimatum. "You don't want to take this any further," he cautioned, his words resonating with a quiet, dangerous finality. The rock's eyes were now cold, the intensity of his glare transformed into a chilling promise of retribution should Kane continue his assault. Kane's folly was unmistakable, his hubris clouding his judgment as he hurled himself at the rock like a wounded animal. But the rock was no prey. He was a predator, his movements honed by years of training and experience. With effortless grace, the rock dodged Kane's clumsy attack, his footwork as precise as it was mesmerizing. With a calculated twist of his leg, the rock caught Kane's foot mid-strike, tripping him and sending him tumbling face first into the dew-kissed grass. The crowd's reaction was electric, a visceral outpouring of support for the rock that seemed to overtake the entire park. "That's what he gets!" they shouted in unison, their cries of approval ringing out in a defiant chorus that drowned out the sounds of the birds and the rustling of leaves. Their enthusiasm was infectious, a joyous celebration of justice finally being served, their admiration for the rock reaching fever pitch. The rock stood, unfazed by the cheers, his focus now entirely on the disgraced officer groaning on the ground. Kane's embarrassment was short-lived, however, as he clambered back to his feet with renewed aggression. His humiliation only fueled his rage, a tempestuous fury that burned like a flame within him. But just as he turned to renew his assault on the rock, two more officers materialized, their footsteps thundering across the grass as they raced to the scene of the altercation. The sight of the rock towering over the disheveled Kane struck them with a paralyzing disbelief, their minds struggling to comprehend the identity of the man who had so effortlessly subdued their colleague. The moment of recognition was almost comical in its absurdity, the sudden revelation dawning on the officers like a flash of lightning in the night sky. Their awe at seeing the world-renowned actor and former wrestler standing before them was palpable, a surreal juxtaposition that defied all expectations. One of the officers, his jaw agape in disbelief, whispered, "Wait, is that Dwayne Johnson?" His words hung in the air like a question mark, his shock coloring his tone as he lowered his weapon, stunned into submission by the unexpected sight of the rock. Kane, his body still trembling with rage and wounded pride, snapped to attention as his fellow officers gawked at the scene before them. Their exchange, an exchange that would have been comical if not for the gravity of the situation, was marked by Kane's bewilderment as he tried to make sense of the situation. "Who?" he barked, the belligerence in his voice unable to mask his confusion as he tried to comprehend the enormity of the situation, his gaze flitting from his fellow officers to the rock with growing apprehension. Taking charge of the situation, the second officer stepped forward with an air of authority, his demeanor markedly different from that of his colleague. His voice, now tinged with a professional politeness, conveyed a tone of deference as he addressed the rock with respect. "Mr. Johnson," he began, his words almost reverent, "are you okay? We didn't know you were here." His posture was one of utmost courtesy, the realization that he stood before a living legend not lost on him. Kane's disbelief grew, his features transforming into a twisted caricature of incredulity as he absorbed the information. "What?" he stammered, his tone one of utter bewilderment as the scales finally fell from his eyes. "This guy is somebody important," he gasped, his question underscoring the depths of his ignorance. The situation which had once seemed to favor Kane was rapidly shifting against him as the rock's identity revealed itself, the entire incident now looking like a colossal misjudgment on Kane's part. The second officer, seething at Kane's obstinate arrogance, turned his gaze upon him with a look of pure, searing scorn. "He's not just important," he growled, his voice crackling with anger. "He's one of the most respected figures in the country, a man who has captured the hearts and minds of millions. And you, in your infinite ignorance, assaulted him." His eyes blazed with the raw intensity of righteous indignation, his tone dripping with condemnation and disdain as he stood by the rock's side, a loyal ally in the face of Kane's reckless behavior. Kane's swagger and arrogance crumbled like a house of cards, his bravado giving way to a flood of panic as the full weight of his transgression dawned upon him. I didn't know," he stammered, his words faltering as he attempted to salvage the situation, his demeanor now a far cry from the brashness that had fueled his actions just moments before. He swallowed hard, his hands fidgeting by his sides as he desperately sought a way out of the predicament he had created. The Rock, his composure never wavering, interjected with a voice that was as sharp and resolute as a blade. "You didn't care to know," he said, his words cutting through the silence with unsparing clarity. "You judged me based on my appearance, on a preconceived idea of who you thought I was, and used that as justification to treat me like a criminal. That says far more about you than it does about me." The Rock's words reverberated with power, his demeanor radiating a confident strength that demanded attention and respect. Stepping forward with a commanding presence, the senior officer addressed the crowd, his voice ringing with the authority of a leader determined to bring justice. "Officer Kane," he declared, his gaze lingering on Kane's stunned expression, "you are hereby placed under investigation for misconduct. You will hand over your badge and your gun?" His words were crisp and authoritative, his demeanor leaving no room for argument, as the crowd, caught in the drama unfolding before them, buzzed with approval at the sight of Kane's imminent downfall. Kane attempted to protest, his mouth opening in a last-ditch effort to salvage his career, but the senior officer, having heard enough, silenced him with a dismissive wave of his hand. "We've got plenty of witnesses and footage," he growled, his voice now bristling with indignation. "Your behavior is unacceptable, and it won't be tolerated in this department. Hand over your badge and gun, now." The authority in his tone left Kane with no choice but to comply, his defiance wilting under the onslaught of his superior's scathing rebuke. As Kane was ushered away in disgrace, escorted by his fellow officers, the crowd erupted into a thunderous ovation, their cheers cascading through the marketplace like a wave of jubilation. In the midst of this impromptu celebration, the Rock turned to face the crowd, his expression a mixture of humility and gratitude as he addressed the people of the town. "Thank you for your support," he began, his voice resonant with genuine appreciation. The Rock's gaze swept across the sea of faces before him, a subtle note of solidarity and empathy coloring his voice. "This isn't about who I am," he declared, his tone ringing with conviction. "It's about standing up to injustice, about refusing to accept mistreatment and discrimination in any form. No one, celebrity or not, deserves to be treated the way Officer Kane treated me today. It's up to all of us, together, to demand better, to hold those who abuse their power accountable." The Rock's message, a rallying cry for justice and dignity, struck a chord in the hearts of the assembled crowd. As if energized by his words, they cheered even louder, their voices reaching a crescendo of enthusiasm and agreement. His speech, a simple yet impassioned call to action, resonated with the very core of their being, sparking a fire of resolve that illuminated their faces with a sense of hope and determination. As the Rock made his way through the crowd, his steps purposeful and dignified, a young boy broke through the throng of spectators, a notebook clutched tightly in his small hands. His eyes shone with a childlike wonder, the adoration for his hero written plainly on his face. "Can I get your autograph, Mr. Johnson?" he asked, his voice trembling with excitement and awe. The Rock, his expression softening at the sight of the boy, nodded with a warm smile, kneeling down to sign the notebook. With a genuine smile that radiated kindness and warmth, the Rock knelt down to meet the young boy's gaze, his towering frame becoming a gentle and approachable presence. "Of course, buddy," he said, his voice filled with a gentle affection that put the child instantly at ease. "What's your name?" The Rock's simple question, asked with a sincerity that belied his celebrity status, melted away the barriers between them, creating an intimate moment of connection that transcended their differences in age and stature. As the boy looked on with unbridled excitement, the Rock's pen danced across the notebook, creating a keepsake that would surely be treasured for years to come. In that moment, the boy's mother stepped forward, her gratitude palpable in her voice. "Thank you for standing up today," she said, her words tinged with a powerful sense of relief. "You've made a difference, not just for my son, but for everyone who witnessed what you did today. Thank you." Her eyes shone with a blend of appreciation and admiration, her gratitude a testament to the Rock's heroic deeds. The Rock acknowledged the mother's gratitude with a nod, his expression conveying a deep understanding of his responsibility as a hero, a leader, and a role model. It's not just about standing up for yourself, he affirmed, his words carrying the weight of his convictions. It's about standing up for everyone, about ensuring that justice and dignity are upheld for all. That's what being a hero is truly about. With those words, the rock turned away, the golden rays of the setting sun illuminating his powerful form as he walked off into the distance.